Can video games be considered art? In my opinion, yes. How would I back up an opinion like that though? Let me take you back to a simpler time, where gamers could be entitled to the sweat of their brow, experience a complete game, one that hits a home run in every single aspect from its masterful story, fantastic gameplay, and its timeless presentation. The best argument for what game would be considered art is BioShock. I remember when I first got an Xbox 360, there were trailers on the console that you could watch, and as an 8-year-old, I saw the title of this game and thought that it sounded cool. I watched the trailer, and it freaked me out a little bit to say the least, mostly because of things like this. Yeah, I think I'll stick with LEGO Indiana Jones and Halo 3. 2 years later, I came across it again, as my cousin had bought the game and its sequel, BioShock 2. I saw him play through the first game and played a bit for myself. From that moment, I was hooked and started playing. A few days later, I bought a copy for myself. My cousin and I progressed through the game together, always saying what parts we got up to and all that. BioShock 1 and 2 became some of my absolute favourite games when I was growing up. BioShock 1 was developed by Irrational Games and headed by Ken Levine, and released in 2007 for the Xbox 360, PC, and in 2008 saw a PS3 release. BioShock was met with universal acclaim from both critics and gamers, something considered more than a game, but a work of art. It was praised for its gameplay, concept, setting, themes, and absolutely phenomenal story and presentation. Ken Levine took heavy inspiration from writer and objectivist Ayn Rand, who is known for such novels such as Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, which have many parallels in the game. It's a game that no matter how many times I revisit, I still absolutely adore and love the game, even nearly more so nearly 15 years after its original release. I'd even argue that in terms of being an FPS, it should be held in the same standard as games like Halo Combat Evolved. There are not many game franchises that I really love to dive into the lore and story, except for games like Halo, Gears of War, Borderlands, Assassin's Creed, and of course, BioShock. One of BioShock's strongest traits is its narrative and story. The year is 1960 and you play as Jack, a man who is on a plane to visit his family, and it is here where you hear Jack speak his first and only one time during the duration of the game.
They told me, son, you're special. You were born to do great things. You know what? They were right.
The game fades to black just before the plane crashes into the ocean. Jack swims to the surface and finds a lighthouse in the distance and makes his way to it. Upon entering, he's greeted by a golden statue of a man named Andrew Ryan with a text reading, "No gods or kings, only man." With an instrumental of Beyond the Sea playing in the background, Jack makes it to a bathysphere, and it begins to take him to the depths of the Atlantic, where the following cutscene plays.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture. Where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the sweat of your brow, rapture can become your city as well.
This whole section with the plane crash and the reveal of the underwater city of Rapture has to be one of the greatest openings to a video game ever produced. Barely 5 minutes in, and I'm already hooked. Rapture may look like a beautiful city on the outside, as Andrew Ryan, the founder of Rapture, has proclaimed it to be, but on the inside, it becomes very evident that this once proud utopia has become a dystopia.
Is it someone new?
You pick up a shortwave radio and are introduced to a man named Atlas, who sports an amazing working-class Dublin Irish accent.
I'm Atlas, and I aim to keep you alive.
He claims that he has a wife and child in Rapture, and wants to escape back to the surface with them, but he's been cut off and needs your help finding them. As he guides you through the first few rooms of Rapture, you come across a substance that you inject into your wrist, because that's just what you do. The substance that you inject was a plasmid known as Electrobolt, the ability to shoot lightning from one's hands. The plasmids are made from a liquid from a unique sea slug known as Adam. Adam is something that can alter one's genetic code and give abilities such as telekinesis and pyrokinesis. Adam is revealed as one of the key things that led to Rapture's downfall. You eventually make it to a room where you see a little girl getting assaulted by a splicer being a person addicted to Adam and has lost all sanity. It is here where you're introduced to the Big Daddy, who shows us what happens if we assault little children. I remember seeing this and dreading my encounter with it. Big Daddies are genetically enhanced humans who have had their skin and organs grafted to their diving suits. They originally served as maintenance workers, but over time became reassigned to be the protectors of Little Sisters. Little Sisters once used to be innocent and free little girls, but have been transformed into hosts for Adam's sea slugs to mass reproduce Adam and recycle more of it from corpses around Rapture. It's here where you're probably thinking it might be a good idea to go home. Unfortunately, you run into more trouble as Andrew Ryan tracks you down and is immediately suspicious of your presence, questioning if you're part of the KGB or CIA. It matters not to him though, as he sends splicers after you and you're required to make a detour to the medical pavilion. You try to lift the emergency access, but the key has been taken by a surgeon named Dr. Steinman, a man who abused his body with Adam and has become obsessed with trying to make his patients perfect in his eyes, making him go insane in the process.
I want to make them beautiful, but they always turn out wrong. That was too fat. This was too tall. This was too symmetrical. And now, what's this, guys? An intruder. He's ugly. 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 Ugly.
After a few setbacks, you make it to Steinman, kill him, and take the key. A tunnel collapses and you travel through another door to find a Big Daddy blown up by a splicer attempting to harvest a little sister for her Adam. It is here where you're introduced to the founder of Adam and the creator of the Little Sisters, Dr. Tenenbaum. She guns down the splicer and threatens you too if you decide to get too close. Atlas reveals that it was her who turned the little girls into Little Sisters and should not be shown such sympathy, advising you on harvesting Adam from them to save his wife and child is the lesser of two evils. However, Tenenbaum has been seeking to undo her work and throws you a plasmid that restores the Little Sisters back to their natural state and only harvests the Adam and not the entire Little Sisters' body. Depending on how you decide to deal with the Little Sisters, it will affect the game's ending. You reach Neptune's bounty and meet a man named Peach Wilkins. He refuses to let you through until you do a task for him and is suspicious that you've been sent by the notorious late mobster and arch-rival to Andrew Ryan, Frank Fontaine. You eventually do the said task for Peach and make it to a sub-bay where Atlas's family is being held. It is here where Ryan warns you that if you don't turn back now, you'll know what it is truly like to be his enemy. You let Atlas through the submarine bay and the splicers attack you both. You fight them off and attempt to save his wife Moira and son Patrick, and then the following scene plays. Ryan blew up the sub, seemingly killing Atlas's family and leaving you both with a new objective: revenge on Ryan. Ryan becomes all the more suspicious of you and Atlas and claims that he will uncover who you really are and why you've come to Rapture. That isn't the only part of the plot, but the bigger parts I'll go into detail in a separate section, including the game's backstory and major plot twist. I'll discuss this towards the end of the video. Overall, the narrative so far has been incredibly strong with its beginning, and it's really just the icing on the layers of cake this game has. How does the gameplay handle though? Thankfully, it hits it out of the park as well. BioShock is a first-person shooter with some role-playing elements. It's not designed in the style of a traditional first-person shooter though. There are not all of these over-the-top action moments within the gameplay. There are some action moments, but not enough to make it feel like another typical first-person shooter. In a lot of games, not all weapons and forms of combat in the sandbox feel all that viable, but in BioShock, every style feels viable. Some are definitely stronger than others, but no weapon, plasmid or tonic feels like it couldn't have a positive impact depending on your playstyle. If you're the type of person that likes to play more defensively, there are weapons, plasmids and tonics just for things like that. Things like Security Command, where you can have security bots, cameras and turrets all target the one enemy you want to deal with. If you're someone who likes to play more on the offensive, there is much to choose from, such as the 1-2 punch strategy that Atlas teaches you at the start of the game with the zap of Electrobolt and the melee of a wrench. There's a part in the game where your plasmid structure will get reorganised and you might find yourself using plasmids that you've never tried or don't use too often, and it's something that I appreciate, as on many different playthroughs it may inspire you to go through and experiment with other playstyles. You have gene tonics that function almost like perks for you, such as things like Sports Boost, which can make you run faster, or Wrench Jockey, which gives you a much more powerful wrench, or other tonics which help you with avoiding security. You have a separate currency for buying upgrades for plasmids and tonics, which is your Atom. The way to obtain it is by dealing with the little sisters in the game, and I'd personally recommend saving them, as you are given exclusive plasmids and tonics from Tenenbaum at the Gatherer's Gardens in teddy bears for every third little sister you save. You can buy more powerful variants of plasmids at Gatherer's Gardens, as well as more slots for plasmids and tonics. Anytime you want to switch out plasmids and tonics, just head to a gene bank and it'll bring up a menu for what you want to switch. All of the guns feel amazing too, and have 3 different firing options. Some of my personal favourite guns to use would be the shotgun and the crossbow. Some of the different firing options you can get would be armour-piercing rounds, which are good against security bots and big daddies, anti-personal rounds, which are good against splicers, and other types of ammo such as electric buck for your shotgun or electrified trap ammo for your crossbow. Each weapon has 2 upgrades and can be found at weapon upgrade stations, but you can only use each station once per area, so upgrade wisely. There are a variety of different enemy types in BioShock, and even different variants of the same enemy. You'll come across your basic thuggish and leadhead splicers who wield melee weapons and guns. Then some of the really creative splicers, such as the Houdini splicer, who shoots fireballs and teleports away if taking too much damage or to try and trick you. Spider splicers, who scale the ceilings and attack with hooks by throwing them or slicing you. Nitro splicers will carry grenade boxes and lob grenades at you from a distance or whilst running. You have a range of security bots too, such as the flying bots that will attack you if an alarm is tripped from a security camera or if one is loyal to a splicer. There are also machine gun and missile launching turrets that will attack you if in sight. However, the most recognisable enemies and icons of the series are the Big Daddies. The types of Big Daddy that you will encounter will be Bouncers and Rosies, which both have elite variants later on in the game. Bouncers are incredibly fast and specialise in stunning and lunging towards the player during fights. They will have one arm as a drill or a spinning harpoon, so stay clear of that as best you can, as they pack a mean punch. Rosies wield rivet guns and prefer to stay back at a certain distance to fight you. They will also throw proximity mines at you if you stay back. If you do get close, they will melee you. Big Daddies can be a tough fight at first, depending on the difficulty of course, but there are several different ways to kill them. Always be prepared before you take one on. Big Daddies will remain neutral with you unless you continuously harass them by getting too close, attacking them, or attacking their little sister. Unfortunately, not all aspects of BioShock are perfect, and these 2 gameplay mechanics will show why. When you meet up with Peach Wilkins, he tasks you with getting a research camera. This is something that you will use to take photos of enemies you encounter during the game, as the camera analyzes their strengths and weaknesses. You take a photo, you get a grade for the quality of the photo, and things of the quality of the shot are considered. Once you fill the bar of a subject, you unlock bonus damages and even tonics when fighting that particular enemy. In the long run, it is a good thing, but spamming the camera at the enemy until the score isn't high enough just becomes really tedious. Not bad, just annoying. The other thing is the infamous hacking minigame in BioShock. I don't think it's completely terrible, but it takes you out of the world in Rapture. I don't think it's absolutely terrible though, as you aren't required to hack everything in the game. Nobody has time for that. It can be decent the first few times, and there are risks when doing it, such as losing health or triggering an alarm. Just choose what to hack. It's also worth noting that if you research security bots and turrets enough, you can hack them instantly. One of the other things that I can think of off the top of my head is that the aiming, not always but sometimes, feels a bit sluggish when on console compared to other modern shooters. This isn't really much of an issue on PC, and I'd happily say that the PC version is the superior way to play it. Any sort of medkits, EVE hypos, and ammunition that you want to get your hands on can be looted from corpses found in safes around the general area or from vending machines. Some of these can even be invented via the UN vent machines, where if you bring enough of the right supplies, you can create a specific item. So upon editing this really long video, I've just realised that I forgot to talk about the Vita Chamber, or Vita Chamber. So anytime that you die, you will get respawned by one of those, so it can also kind of negate a bit of challenge, but you do have the option to turn it off, and it depends on what difficulty you're on, so it's not all that terrible. Enemy AI is usually alright, but it can be a little bit sketchy at times. I'm not sure if it varies between editions of the game though. Gameplay in BioShock, for the most part, has aged incredibly well. Some not so much though. One thing that may have aged even better is its phenomenal and iconic presentation. I would happily say that BioShock's presentation is absolutely timeless. There aren't many games that hold up even as well from around about the same time as the original BioShock release. Everything from the opening scene, for example, is fully rendered, and this genuinely surprised me. Irrational Games really wanted to make this game feel unique, memorable, and isolated, and they hit it out of the park. Some game developers, especially today, don't bother to have a decent reason as to why you can't explore an area, or just have a boundary timer to return to the battlefield. Rapture, being an underwater city in ruin, basically is the in-game explanation for why you can't explore all areas. It might not be much, but I'd much prefer this much detail rather than just having an invisible barrier. It doesn't feel like your immersion is being broken. BioShock's levels have a free-roaming style gameplay, so much to explore and still not feel empty. You're rewarded for exploring with unique tonics, special ammo types, or just a lot of cash. Each level has a location that seems relevant to the overall context of Rapture, once being a paradise where people could thrive. Places like Fort Frolic, where the arts and entertainment would transpire with music, plays, and artwork would be displayed. Arcadia, where the trees would supply the oxygen throughout the city, and where botanists would work. Hephaestus, where all of the power in the city would come from and is supplied to, as well as other places like Olympus Heights, where Rapture's elite would house in. The thing I love most about locations like this is because not only does it tie the story together incredibly well, but each place is so memorable and great to fight in and a blast to play through. It gives insight as to why people would want to leave the surface world and relocate to a place like Rapture. The game doesn't hold your hand for too long either. The game respects your intelligence. You're told once by Atlas to shock splicers if you see them in the water, which infers that plasmids can interact with the environment too. So when you later get plasmids like Incinerate, you'd be smart to use it on ice to melt it, or oil to attack splicers. I can't talk about the presentation without mentioning the art style. BioShock's art style is nothing short of breathtaking. Take your time to look around when you play this game, as it's just mesmerising. I love seeing the city from all different perspectives, such as out a glass window into the deep sea, and overlooking other buildings, leaks in hallways, and water breaking through the city, and illuminating lighting in the city that shows the horrors of what Rapture has become. It's a beautiful and unsettling environment. What makes BioShock scary isn't due to relying on tropes like jump scares, but the fear of the unknown, being overwhelmed, in over your head, and isolated in a place that has broken apart both figuratively and literally. The sound design is also great, with weapons all sounding beefy, and the hulking footsteps and whale-like groans of Big Daddies make the place feel all the more iconic. The infomercial propaganda that plays between when buying a new plasmid is also a fantastic touch. Rapture also being set in the 1950s-60s era mean that the place is like a time capsule, with some beautiful tracks such as one of my absolute favourite songs of all time, Beyond the Sea, being in the game. Its original music is also very beautifully composed and fits the tone of the game seamlessly. I think one of BioShock's greatest strengths in presentation as well is its audio diaries. Not only do you get different perspectives from citizens in Rapture during key events, but it can also be found in a location where if you look around, the place also paints a story. Best part is you're not actually required to find all of these to understand the main story, but it is there for those who want to listen to them. There isn't a line of dialogue that feels out of place or terribly done in this game, and that is thanks to the brilliant direction, writing and performances of the voice cast, with highlights being that of Armin Shimmerman as Andrew Ryan, Anne Bobby as Bridget Tenenbaum, Carl Hanover as Atlas, Greg Baldwin as Frank Fontaine, T. Ryder Smith as Sander Cohen, and of course, Ken Levine himself as the Circus of Values.
Welcome to the Circus of Values!
Control is also very rarely taken away from the player, unless it's really important in the context of the story. It's great, as you feel all the more immersed and you are the one who is experiencing the story through Jack's eyes. This game is a master of showing and not telling. There is exposition, but it is used masterfully and is not distracting. Normally here in the review retrospective style videos that I do, I would cut to the verdict section and end the video, but I'm not going to do that with this one. BioShock's story that I covered is only the icing on the many layers of cake that this game has. It is here where I'll discuss the history of Rapture and the whole plot of the game, including its phenomenal plot twist. I highly suggest that you don't watch this part of the video, and will put a time skip on the video so you can avoid the spoilers, unless of course you've played the game. I can't recommend enough that if you haven't played this game in full, to do so and experience all that I've covered so far, and what I'm about to cover. You have been warned. At the beginning when you enter Rapture, you don't know much. However, slowly but surely, the layers of Rapture's history are peeled back, revealing its origin. Andrew Ryan, formerly known as Andrei Ryanovsky, built the city as he was fed up with the political and religious climates of where he originally lived in the Russian Empire, then turned into the Soviet Union, and then the United States of America. Him saying that a man should be entitled to the sweat of one's brow means that one should be entitled for what one works for. Those who demand or request help, such as the lower class or those who try to leech off another one's success, were nothing more than parasites to him. He wanted a society where a government provided freedom and no regulation of markets. People would be free to do as they wanted without any constraints of morality holding them back, such as things like art and scientific advancements. Freedom was the goal, and what was considered right or wrong shouldn't be an obstacle to things like human potential. It turns out about as well as you would expect. Initially, the city of Rapture thrived and was for one time a utopia that Ryan had dreamed of. He invited what he considered to be the brightest and most talented individuals in the world down to his city. The elite made well for themselves for a time, but the problems started to arise. The ones who helped build Rapture and the poorer citizens began to resent Ryan for his lack of support. This is where the notorious mobster, Frank Fontaine, comes into the light. He sees an opportunity to one-up Ryan and sets up a home for the poor, giving them handouts and places to sleep. Around this same time, a miracle discovery is made. A sea slug that could heal and even alter one's genetic code was discovered in the Atlantic near Rapture by scientist Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum. She discovers that the liquid that she named Adam can be mass-produced if someone funds her research. Fontaine sees the business opportunity and takes it. They discover that the best host to generate the most amount of Adam is to place the sea slug inside a little girl. So Fontaine creates the Little Sisters orphanage to get little girls let into his custody and used for manufacturing more plasmids and tonics. Ryan saw this and initially praised Fontaine as an example of someone who could thrive in Rapture, but soon discovers that Fontaine is also up to some illegal activity. Contact with the outside world was the only law at the time, and Fontaine had a smuggling operation to get supplies into Rapture that were forbidden from Ryan's ideas. Ryan began closing in on Fontaine and had him killed in a shootout. Ryan thought that the rebellion had been crushed, but his dream of a utopia would soon come crashing down. Tenenbaum began to resent her work, feeling bad for the Little Sisters, and denounced the program, and Ryan labelled her delusional, and as did the public. She disappeared into hiding and began her research on ways to cure Little Sisters. Ryan took over Fontaine Futuristics, Fontaine's atom business, and some saw this as a betrayal of what Ryan's ideals were for Rapture. Out of the ashes, a freedom fighter and proclaimed family man named Atlas began to speak out against Ryan and his ideals. He rallied up the poor and splicers, and a long brutal civil war between Ryan and Atlas began. The war came to a halt when Ryan decided he was losing his grip on Rapture to compromise the one thing that he held above everything: freedom of choice. He began pumping pheromones into the air, making splicers in Rapture open to mental suggestion. He had the splicers under his control, he had the bathyspheres only able to work with his own DNA, and this left Atlas trapped and defeated. Around this time is where the events of the game in the present take place. Back to the present. Jack makes his way to Arcadia and must build a device called the Lazarus Vector, as Ryan began killing the trees, leaving Rapture without oxygen. After deploying the Vector, you make it to Fort Frolic, and just before you're able to leave, you are stopped and cut off from Atlas and Ryan. You are introduced to the owner of the place, Sander Cohen. This is one of my favourite sections in the game, as Cohen may obviously be insane, but he isn't necessarily your enemy. You collaborate with him to finish his masterpiece by taking photos of corpses and placing them on a display wall. Some people will just do anything for views. At one stage he believes that you're going to betray him and send splicers after you. After dealing with the splicers and finishing the masterpiece, Cohen reveals himself and you have the choice to kill him. Cohen lets you leave and you reconnect with Atlas, who tells you to head to Ryan's office and kill him. To do this, you must build an EMP bomb to disable his security system. It is here where Ryan begins to warn you that trusting Atlas is a mistake, and that he will inevitably knife you in the back. You disable the security system, and then Ryan sets the city to self-destruct. If you can't have Rapture, no one can.
Atlas, you can kill me, but you will never have my city. My strength is not in steel and fire. That is what the parasites will never understand. A season for all things. A time to live and a time to die. A time to build and a time to destroy! Come now, my child. There is one final thing to discuss.
Before you make it into his office, you come across a room with big red lettering reading, "Would you kindly?" You see photos of Ryan, Fontaine, Jasmine Jolene, Dr. Suchong, and what looks like to be yourself. You have the option of picking up 2 audio diaries. It seems as if this "would you kindly" phrase is some sort of mind control.
She's very pretty.
Thank you, Papa Suchong.
Break her neck for me.
What?
Break that sweet puppy's neck. No, please. Break that puppy's neck. Would you kindly? No. No. Very good.
No time to waste though, as you head to Ryan's office. You don't get a fight, but you certainly do get a taste of reality.
The assassin has overcome my final defense, and now he's come to murder me. In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys. You think you have memories. A farm. A family. An airplane. A crash. And then this place. Was there really a family? Did that airplane crash? Or was it hijacked? Forced down. Forced down by something less than a man, something bred to sleepwalk through life until they are activated by a simple phrase spoken by their kindly master. Was a man sent to kill, or a slave?
It's here where you start getting answers to questions you never really considered. You've never really thought about why you're in Rapture. As it turns out, Jack is the key to everything.
Stop. Would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Absolutely nothing could have prepared me for the bombshell that this twist is. It makes you question absolutely everything, both in the game and in your own life. Is free will really a thing? We make choices, but in the end, our choices make us, due to cause and effect. This works in a video game context too, as the player can only play the game the way the developers had intended you to and as designed. It really makes you think.
Kill! Juices! I slay obeys! Obey!
Some people, I think, also really misinterpret the meaning of Ryan's death. Ryan's whole monologue about a man choosing and a slave obeying is completely in line with his character and death. He wanted to prove to Jack and to us that we had absolutely no choice or control over our actions if the correct phrase is said. Ryan was in complete control of his death and went out on his own terms and didn't let the parasites kill him. So, what about Atlas? How does he fit into all of this? Well, the second part of the twist is here.
Nice work by all. It's time to end this little masquerade. There ain't no Atlas kid. Never was. Selling my line of work takes on a variety of aliases. Hell, once I was even a Chinaman for 6 months. And a spawn. So I guess I owe you a little honesty. The name's Frank Fonte.
We've been had by Rapture's most infamous conman and mobster, Frank Fontaine. He is alive and planned out the entire operation. He is the one who took you away from Ryan and Jasmine Jolene. He is the one who told Suchong and Tenenbaum to imprint your mind with mind control phrases. He is the one who had your growth accelerated, and he is the one who sent you down to Rapture and have just handed over the city of Rapture to him. You have been doing the bidding of the bad guy the entire time. What grounds this twist even more within the context of the game is when you killed Dr. Steinman, he was the surgeon who altered Fontaine's appearance to look like Atlas, and Peach Wilkins was convinced that you had been sent by Fontaine to kill him. And he was right. Fontaine also used the names of a fake family from a play that can be found in Fort Frolic titled Patrick and Moira. The twist has always been there, but hiding in plain sight. That is what makes this twist excellent. It doesn't feel like it comes out of anywhere or nowhere. You also now have a new perspective on Ryan and Jasmine Jolene, as she sold her embryo of you to Tenenbaum, not knowing Fontaine was involved, and had been killed by Ryan in a fit of rage. You literally see the corpse of your mother. After the betrayal of Fontaine, you are recovered by Tenenbaum, who had begun to undo some of the mental conditioning that Fontaine had you under, including the "would you kindly" phrase. Fontaine soon realizes this, but still has another called Code Yellow. He commands your heart to stop beating slowly over time, which will kill you. Luckily, Tenenbaum has an inkling of a cure named Lot 192 that can rid you of all the mental conditioning. You head to Fontaine's office and find one dose. Unfortunately, you need a larger dose to prevent the side effects. You head to Su Chong's lab for the second dose, and this was made in case the mind control fell under either Fontaine or Su Chong. Upon entering Su Chong's lab, it is here where you find Su Chong's unfortunate fate by his own creation. After breaking the spell, Fontaine challenges you to a showdown, but flees to the top of the city with all the Adam. Tenenbaum knows you don't stand a chance against him as you are, but if you become a Big Daddy and earn the trust of the Little Sisters, you could defeat him. To become one, you must grab the suit of a Rosie, have your voice box altered, and get pheromones to attract the Little Sisters. Once completed, you make your way towards Fontaine in a defense section that may have unintentionally inspired BioShock 2. You are then given an Adam Drainer, as the only way to kill Fontaine is to drain all of his Adam. You finally confront Fontaine at the top of Rapture, and he's turned himself into a hulking superhuman. As you drain him, he attacks you and sends splices and security bots after you. Rinse and repeat 3 times, and then you defeat him. The boss fight isn't all that great, but I don't hate it. In the end, it's Fontaine's creations, being Adam, Jack, and the Little Sisters, who take him out. The Little Sisters overwhelm him and drain him of all of his Adam. It's kind of ironic that his creations are the reason for his undoing. Depending on how you dealt with the Little Sisters, you have 3 different endings that you can get. You can get the evil ending where Jack takes control of Rapture, controls the splices, and seeks to dominate the Earth with Tenenbaum scolding you. The other bad ending plays out the same, but Tenenbaum shows disappointment as you save a few Little Sisters. The good ending seems to be the best, I think, with Jack refusing control of the city and raising the Little Sisters as his own daughters. It's a beautiful ending where he finally has a family.
And in the end, what was your reward? You never said, but I think I know. A family.
BioShock is by no means a perfect game, but it most certainly is a masterpiece, and has earned being called a work of art. With its masterfully crafted narrative, its themes on power, morality, and freedom, the timelessly beautiful art style, the iconic figures and enemies, the beautiful soundtrack and license tracks, incredible writing, superb voice acting, and the phenomenal mind and direction by Ken Levine. The game spawned 2 sequels, which I both really love too. However, BioShock 2 and BioShock Infinite didn't quite recapture the magic that this game had. All 3 are great games though. I'm interested to see where the series will go, as there is a 4th one in development. It'd be interesting to see if they would go back to the roots of BioShock 1 and the System Shock games, and include some more RPG elements. Only time will tell. This game is so deep and full of magic that I don't think one video is enough to cover how excellently crafted this game is. If you haven't played BioShock, I cannot recommend the game enough. Even to those who aren't gamers, if you have played it, I hope I got you excited to play it again.